Menzel is now a partner with JM Search in Chicago. He graduated from LER in 1987. He's held several positions at General Mills in Cedar Rapids, Buffalo. I'm originally from Buffalo. You probably saw some snow.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And I met a wife. Even better.
Really? Cool. You were at Pillsbury. Then you had your first VP role at Dantas in Chicago. You moved into the CHRO spot at Ray's Holdings in Rosemont. And then in the last decade, you were Vice President for HR at Sara Lee and Vice President of HR at Sears before moving into your current partnership at JM Search. You served on the board of directors of Little Brothers, so that's really very inspiring. Phil holds his bachelor's degree from the University of Iowa. We don't hold that against you. And is currently serving LER as a member of our Capital Campaign Advisory Board, along people such distinguished previous Alumni Award winners as Alan May, Wayne Anderson, and Ron Sibiora. So we're very excited to also honor you folks.
So needless to say, this is pretty cool. To have the opportunity to be recognized with my dad. So and first of all, I want to thank Fritz and the alumni board, and particularly Andrew. Were you with your new glasses? Were you? For the nomination. So it's a special night for a really special place. And so my dad kind of started with his story on how he got into this, and I guess I'll start with mine, which was I went to Iowa to get a business degree. I really had no interest in particular to get into HR or follow my dad. It just kind of like happened. In fact, it happened on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to take next in a class, and someone said, well, why don't you take Personnel 101? I go, oh yeah. Like, all right. So I took it and loved it. And because it fit a lot of the things that I wanted to do, and like how I felt about things in the government and the legal. And then I got my degree. And then I was like, now I want to work. And my dad's like, well, I think you have to go to grad school. I'm like, no, I want to work. Like, I want to move to Lincoln Park. I want to get a job. I want to work. And but it's really, really hard to get a job as with just an undergraduate. And in fact, my dad had given me a number of opportunities to interview. And they're like, we like your dad. You seem like a great guy, but we're really looking for someone with 2 to 3 years of experience or a master's degree. And then, of course, I'd have to come and tell my dad, like, what happened, and then he'd go, you really need to go to grad school. And I'm like, okay. So I decided to go to grad school, which basically turned out to be the best decision I ever made that I didn't want to do. And it really was, but for me, it was, when I got to Champaign, it was simply transformational, right? And I had gone from like this kid who couldn't buy, I could get an interview, but I couldn't buy a job. And suddenly I got to the Institute, and in 18 short months, and actually within 6 months, you're now interviewing with 20 companies that are like looking for you, that are actually like recruiting you. And I'm like, I'm not really sure like what changed, but I liked it. Right? I mean, it really was. But the transformation of like getting in and getting that academic pedigree and getting the credibility that came with it, but all the experiences that I got at the Institute, and actually meeting all the people that my dad had talked about, like Milton Derber, I was an RA for him, and Martin Wagner, all these kind of like these mythological people. It was just amazing. But then it was like the people that you met. So it really transformed the experience of like undergraduate, where you're going to school, you're trying to memorize, you're trying to get a grade, where you're now you're into it, right? And like, this is going to be my life. And you're talking to people that care about the same things, and it was just amazing how it just like took everything up to another level. And and when I was putting together my thoughts around this presentation, there were really like two things that stood out as it relates to the Institute. And then, like, the first thing was, like, for me, was the foundation of development that I received at the Institute, right? So before, you're just kind of like, you're just going through the motions, and then you get to the Institute, and suddenly, like, you're in your space, right? And you start to understand, like, what this thing is all about, and like what it can do for you, and then what you can do for other people. And so and the opportunity to get with these Class A companies. I mean, like, suddenly, like, Pepsi, General Mills, Chrysler, Ford, all these companies like now want you. And I had the privilege to join General Mills, and which was really amazing. So it kind of like that foundation of development for me to get into these companies that not only want to hire you, but they want to invest in you. And they, like at General Mills, spent 10 years investing in my development. I mean, I moved every 18 years, and you're continually moving up. And the thing that did for me, which was instilling you around this expectation around continually moving forward and wanting to get better. And and then once you get past those first 10 or 15 years, and you realize, well, actually not as many people care about your development as you do, that you have to now kind of like be you're a free agent, and kind of thinking about that. But the foundation that I got at the Institute around like thinking about that, and then General Mills, it always got me to the point where I'm like, I need to think about like how I'm going to get better. How am I going to develop? How am I going to help others? And it, for me, it baked this like personal philosophy that I don't want to go through life ever feeling like that I peaked. I don't ever want to be at a point in my life where like my best years are behind me. And so one of the great things about being in and having the opportunity and getting into a space like the Institute and the companies that I've been with is that you can feel like you're always moving forward. And then that becomes a part of your soul and the way that you think about things like, I gotta keep going up. Because you never want to kind of get to the point where, well, I'm just gonna ride this thing out. And so that really is, as my dad said, that really started here. And there wasn't anything you really kind of think about when you get into a place where you can really think about that stuff. It started here. The other thing that I thought about was the lifelong relationship that this place provides you, and the opportunity to get into it. Certainly, not everybody takes advantage of that. And personally, like I'm a relationship person, so it came somewhat easy. But the way that the Institute, kind of provides these opportunities to keep coming back and giving back, right? So it's giving you a lot, and it was always, so for me, like that lifelong relationship was about, like for 25 years, I kept coming back and recruiting our own talent, and had the opportunity to kind of be part of, being on the other side of that table, which was awesome, because every company that I went to, whether it was General Mills, Pillsbury, Ray's Holdings, Sara Lee, I'd always go there going, there is this boatload of talent down in Champaign that we've got to get and bring on our team. And so the opportunity to kind of be part of that was awesome. But then in the last, 5 years or so, it's really kind of kicked into gear. And it started with Ray kind of joining in and kind of becoming part of the Institute. Then it was doing the scholarship that my dad had mentioned for my mom. And then my dad kind of doing the big donation as it related to the building. And then Heather inviting me to become part of the LER. And then this. I mean, it's just really amazing that like I graduated 30 years ago, and it's still so incredibly fresh and such a big part of your life. I mean, like, how many people do you know that can say things like that about their grad school program 30 years ago? And you get what you give, right? And but I think the culture and the place that the Institute is, because it's not a real heavy sell. Like in the types of things, and like Heather does a great job of kind of like bringing you in, but it's because it's giving you so much. As my dad said, you want to give back. And so in closing, one of the amazing things to me is that I kind of go back to where I was in 1985 when I was graduating from Iowa, and how as much as things change, as now they've got, actually after I left, they have internships, they had computers, they have all of these amazing things. And as things have changed and continue to change, how much things have stayed the same? Because I know like when Ray graduated from Ripon, it's still at the same time. It was like 30 years later, it's really hard to get a good job in HR without getting a master's degree. And it's the same advice that I was giving my daughter Trish, who's starting to kind of think about these things. And I know that like in 4 years, you're like, it's going to be that same thing. So that's like, it's one of the constants, particularly in this field, is that this is just a particularly phenomenal place to get a start. And you know, if you want, you can have a lifelong relationship. So, thank you.
It's amazing how genuine he is. Yeah, he just thinks, he says to me, he doesn't make it up.
Okay, so